All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at just one single excerpt.
Okay.
It's about feminism, and it really kind of made me pause when I read it.
Interesting.
So I'm really curious to kind of get your take on it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and basically what it's saying is that all these recent feminist movements,
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of pushing this idea that if a woman can't get an abortion,
Yeah,
it's like a life or death situation.
right.
What was your first impression when you read that?
You know what really jumped out at me immediately was the strong language.
Yeah.
It uses words like murder
Right.
when it's talking about abortion, and even goes so far as to compare the experience of being hit by a nuclear bomb.
Wow.
Triple the size of a little man. So,
Fuck subtle.
it's not subtle at all. It's
Yeah.
very in your face.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I immediately thought about, okay, well,
Mhm.
bringing up Hiroshima, like we all know about,
Yeah.
the devastation that was caused in 1945,
Of course.
to bring something that big and tragic into this conversation
Yeah.
seems like a pretty bold move.
It definitely is. And, it really just cranks up the emotional intensity.
Yeah,
That event, the dropping of the atomic bomb, it was like a global turning point.
for sure.
And so to bring it up here, it's
Global.
not just some random history lesson.
Right.
It's meant to really evoke those feelings of just immense destruction and fear.
It makes you wonder if they're trying to say that, like,
Yeah.
preventing abortion is on the same level as, like,
Right.
a global catastrophe.
Yeah.
It feels kind of manipulative.
It does. And that's where I think the use of rhetoric really comes into play.
Okay.
This excerpt, it's not just like stating an opinion.
Yeah.
It's like very carefully crafted to provoke this really strong emotional response.
Right.
Even the word murder is just so potent.
Right.
It frames abortion not just as a disagreement over rights or whatever, but like as this deeply immoral act.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to bypass any sort of, like,
Exactly.
logical argument and go straight for, like,
Straight for the gut.
yeah, the gut punch.
Yeah.
So how does all of this fit into, like, the bigger picture
Right.
of, feminist movements?
Well, it's important to remember that feminism
Yeah.
isn't just this one single unified thing.
Right.
There have been different waves of feminism,
Mhm.
each with their own, kind of focus and emphasis. But, one common thread
Yeah.
is this fight for women's rights and empowerment,
Of course.
which of course includes reproductive rights.
Uh-huh.
But where things get really complicated is that
Right.
even within feminism, you have these varying viewpoints on abortion.
But this excerpt seems to be painting, like, a very specific picture,
Yes.
and maybe even a skewed picture
Yeah.
of what modern feminism is all about.
I think you're right. And that's where the potential bias really comes in.
Okay.
When they use phrases like, all it does is make women think. That's such a huge generalization.
Right.
It's basically dismissing this vast range of issues that feminism tackles.
Right.
And implying that it's just all about this one thing.
Like as if the inability to have an abortion
Right.
is the only thing that defines a woman's life.
Exactly. And it completely ignores all the nuances and
Yes.
complexities of the debate.
It's a good reminder
Yeah.
that even when we're reading something
Right.
that seems to be advocating for a cause we might support,
Mm-hmm.
we still need to be critical.
Absolutely.
We need to ask ourselves, is this a fair and accurate representation?
Yes.
Are there other perspectives that I need to consider?
Yeah,
I think this has been a really eye-opening deep dive.
it has.
We've really unpacked how this excerpt uses
Yeah.
this really powerful language,
Uh-huh.
these historical comparisons
Mhm.
to make its point,
Right.
and how that can be a really effective,
Yes,
but also potentially manipulative
absolutely.
rhetorical strategy.
Yeah, it's almost like a case study in persuasive techniques.
Right.
They're connecting this emotionally charged language
Mm-hmm.
with this major historical event
Yeah.
for maximum impact.
So here's a question for you to think about
Okay.
as we wrap up here.
Right.
Knowing what we've talked about
Mm-hmm.
loaded language and how arguments are framed,
Right.
how do you approach information that's presented in these really heated debates? Do you just automatically accept the claims that are being made?
Yeah.
Or do you take a step back and critically analyze the language and the tactics that are being used?
Interesting.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning and keep learning.